So, this is our first recording of the material that we're planning to cover in the coming week. And we are starting a brand new curriculum where me, Uncle Ken, Pastor, and some other teachers are going to be covering different topics for the next, I believe, about 3 years or so. So, my section is called Christian Apologetics. And I know that's a really big word, but apologetics is not actually apology or anything related to apologies, but it's actually a reasoning or a supportive reasoning of a belief system or a belief. So, Christian apologetics is using logic and reasoning to explain why we believe in Christianity. So my section will cover number 1, does God exist? Number 2, is the Bible really the Word of God? And number 3, was Jesus really the Son of God? So those are really big topics. So it is going to cover, I believe, about 34 weeks to get through all of that. So, but don't worry, it will be spread out, and we'll have lots of times for questions and answers. So we hope by the end of this, you guys will have a firm grasp about why we believe what we believe about these big questions, okay? And this week we're starting with that first question, does God exist? And this is the first week of, I believe, 12 weeks we're going to be spending on this. So this first week we're going to be talking about what faith is and the reasons, the way we reason to explain why we believe in what we do. So some of the big questions that we're going to be answering is, where did the universe come from? The picture on the right shows an artist's rendering of what's called the Big Bang Theory. Some of you have heard of it, and we'll be covering that in the weeks to come. And some people have stated that the Big Bang is a theory as to how the universe came to be. Where did life come from? Is there purpose in the universe? And even more importantly, is there purpose or meaning of my life? So these are some of the big questions that we're going to be trying to answer together. Even in the Bible, in Romans, Paul says, since what may not be or what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Even though God is invisible, he wants us to understand and know him. And he's saying we don't have any excuse because what we see around us is plenty of evidence of that. So we will be showing you in this week and the coming weeks what this plain evidence is. Okay, exciting. Okay, first we'll start with the definition of faith. So faith is kind of a confusing word. We hear it a lot at church. Our parents might use it. And there's some misconceptions about what faith is. We sometimes hear it as being said, we just have to believe. Faith is just believing, okay? Or faith in things unseen. If we can't see it, we just have to have faith. Even the Webster Dictionary states that faith is a strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. So apprehension means like a fear or like a kind of feeling rather than proof. Okay. Instead of that, we want you to actually um, realize that faith is a belief system that we view the world through, and this belief system isn't based on just pure speculation or no proof or no evidence, but it's actually based on reasoning and evidence. There is somewhat of a uh, things unseen, or there's no absolute proof, but there really is no absolute proof of really anything. So faith is a belief in something that we will view the whole world through, but we will have good reason for. This worldview is um, is really important because we have to realize that whatever worldview we have, it will change the way what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. So I know it sounds really confusing right now, but uh, we'll talk you through what the different types of worldviews are and how it really is going to change all these things. So the different types of worldviews include theism, materialism, deism, pantheism. Okay, just sometimes you just got to hear it and see it, and then we'll explain it to make you more familiar. Okay. So theism is a type of worldview where we see the universe as being created by an outside entity. So, as Christians, we believe that this outside entity is God and that He created the universe that we see and understand. And we believe that this God is personal, He's active, and He's a participant in the universe. Deism is different in that, yes, outside entity created the universe, but does not intervene anymore. So He just created it, and then He's left us to our own devices. Pantheism is a doctrine that says the universe is God. So, everything around us uh, came from uh, each other, and it is a God in itself. So, this computer is a God. This table, this cow, the sun is a God. Those are all paganistic beliefs or pantheistic beliefs. Some famous people who have believed in this is like Albert Einstein, and yes, lots of people throughout history have kind of had this belief system. Atheism is kind of like the opposite of theism that we said at first. Atheism believes that the universe came into being um, basically by itself. There was no outside entity that created it, and the universe exists in itself. So those are the 4 different types of worldviews. And what we're going to be doing is um, using different types of reasoning to see which worldview is the most plausible, or which worldview is right, okay, for you and me. Number 1 type of reasoning that we could use is called deductive reasoning. And basically, what deductive reasoning is like a general rule and then applied to a specific person. So if we say, Uncle Ken is a mortal being, or I'm sorry, all mortals die. So since Uncle Ken is a mortal, Uncle Ken will eventually die. Okay, so that's an example of a general rule, and then with deductive reasoning, we can deduce that Uncle Ken will eventually die. Okay, that's a funny one. Inductive reasoning is different in that it uh, it uses observational evidence. So, say for an example, we study a ball. A ball, when dropped to the floor without any support, will just fall down to the ground. And we observe this over and over and over again. And from this observation, we can generalize and say, all unsupported bodies of matter, when dropped in on the earth, will fall to the ground. So that's a type of inductive reasoning. Abductive reasoning is the type of reasoning that we will be using um, because I'll explain what it is. Abductive reasoning sees the effect or the end result and then tries to come up with a reason of how it happened. Okay? So for an example of this, of abductive reasoning, if we look at this picture in this slideshow, there is a footprint, and that is a picture of a footprint on the surface of the moon. And what does that look like? That looks like a boot making a footprint mark. So if this occurred, then what can you infer is maybe somebody left this footprint on the moon. Well, back in the 60s, only one person had been on the moon when they took this picture. So we can, using abductive reasoning, you can say the astronaut left this footprint on the moon. So it kind of works backwards. Another example of this would be when the statement, when it rains, the streets will get wet. Okay? So the end result that we see is that the streets are wet. And the different causes that could cause this is, well, it could have rained. Okay? The streets are wet because it rained. But what could have also happened? Well, there could have been a water balloon fight on the street, and that's why the streets are wet. Another possible cause of why the streets are wet is that the sprinklers were on and they were turned on toward the streets, and that's why the street is wet. So with abductive reasoning, because we only have the end result, we have to realize that there may be more than one cause of the same effect. And therefore, we have to use what's called a method of multiple competing hypotheses. I know those are a lot of big words, but it's really simple. We see the effect. We have to realize that there are several different causes. And then how do we tell the difference? Or how do we tell which cause is actually the right cause that caused that effect? Well, we look for evidences to prove which one is most likely. So we have to look at outside evidence. So I'll go back. So in the example of the wet street, we have to look at, well, are there other evidences that can help us choose behind these three causes? Is there balloon remnants on the ground? Is nothing else wet except the street? Are there sprinklers around there? Other evidences that can help us decide which of those causes are most likely. So this type of reasoning is called inference to the best explanation. You guys are going to be so smart after this. Okay, these are a lot of big words. So by looking at the evidence, we can infer which cause is most likely to have caused the effect. Okay? If it's confusing now, don't worry. We will answer questions about it this coming Saturday. So looking at the multiple pieces of evidences, like we looked at the pieces of balloon, we looked at the sprinklers, we looked at everything else, the houses and the trees, we can infer the most likely explanation. What we have to realize is that because we are only at the end effect of what we're looking at, there is no we have no recording of what exactly happened, so we have no absolute proof of which cause is the true cause. We just have to look at all the evidence and see what gives you the highest amount of certainty. So that's exactly how we're going to answer those big questions. We're going to look at evidence supporting those different hypotheses, and we're going to see if those evidences stand up to, you know, are those evidences likely? Are they true? Do they support what we see? And then we're going to make an informed, reasonable decision based on that evidence. So the different types of worldviews that we just talked about, deism, naturalism, pantheism, or theism, um, those are all different worldviews. Well, we have to look at the evidence of nature and experience, and it will help us decide which of those worldviews is most likely to be true. So the next coming weeks, 12 weeks or so, we're going to be examining physics, astronomy, biology. These are not light topics. They're going to be very challenging, but they're going to be very interesting and very help us to learn a lot about the world and why we believe in what we believe. So, like I said, this is going to be very challenging. Um, the material is very challenging to understand. That everybody uses a lot of big words. I'll try to give you the definitions or use a lot easier words to understand. But by the end of this, you guys are going to be so smart. Your parents may not even have a fraction of this knowledge. A lot of them weren't taught this growing up. I know I wasn't. I went to an Adventist school most of my life, and then a public school where it was kind of given that that atheism was true. So many of your parents who stayed in the Adventist or Christian school systems, they were never really even taught this. So you're going to be learning information that they don't even know to the degree that you're going to be learning it. So why is it that they haven't learned this? Is because media now and the schools are much different than they used to be when we were growing up. When I was younger, almost everybody was Christian, and it was kind of a given that even in public schools, most everybody believed that there was a God, and school was taught in that way. But it's not the case anymore. So as you get off to college and you're encountering people and classes and professors that don't believe the way you do, we really want you to have a full understanding of why they believe they do the way they do and why you should believe the way you should. And not should, I'm sorry, you guys should make your own decision after seeing all the evidence and decide for yourselves, because I'm sure you guys are all so smart. And that's it for this week. And we'll talk more and explain more this coming Saturday, and we'll have a great discussion.